Welcome to FYI, for your information, at PCTV here in Pittsfield. My name is Clark Nichols. I'm the guest host for the show this week, and our subject is the Berkshire Family History Association. It goes back a long time into the mid-70s, and our guests today are Don Lutes, and he's the president of the Berkshire Family History Organization, and Jan Roge. I pronounced it Raji. She's the vice president. So I'll let Don give the introduction to Berkshire Family History Association.
I bet if I went out on North Street and stopped people and asked them if they've ever heard of the Berkshire Family History Association, I'd get about 100% saying no.
Well, that's why we're here today, and I understand and I agree, because I was solicited by one of your members to become a member about 5 years ago. That's how I found out about it.
Well, exactly. We started in 1975, and the reason was there was a big boom in genealogy interest. It was just starting. It seems to go in cycles. After a war, you get a big boom. And for other reasons too, but this one was a little different. The reason for it, we have a godfather. Same with all of the organizations that sprung up at the same time, all because of Alex Haley and Roots. When that book came out, it became a bestseller, and all of a sudden everybody wanted to find out who their ancestors were.
Yeah.
They figured if Alex can go back into darkest Africa, as I recall when I was a kid, all the atlases that were available at the time always had huge areas of Africa labeled unexplored.
Oh my gosh!
So you can imagine what a thing it was for him to be able to go back like 9 or 10 generations and find out who his captured ancestor was.
But it wasn't called, or the organization wasn't called.
No, it wasn't. We started out. Actually, it was founded by Ron Stratton, who was a local radio personality. Excuse me. Had a talk show at noontime every day.
Yeah, I remember him from WBEC.
Yeah, WBEC. And he and several other people. Somebody told me the other day that there was 13 people at our first meeting, and they organized the thing, and I came along about the third meeting, I think it was. I tried to get to the first meeting, but I got lost. I couldn't find it. So
on the outskirts of Pittsfield.
Yeah. So. Originally, we started as a chapter of the Massachusetts Society of Genealogists, which was founded by a person who just happened to be in the business of selling forms devoted to the hobby and books.
Oh, right.
So I got a feeling he had other reasons in mind than just satisfying the
commercial interest.
Right.
I remember those fanned forms where you filled out the piece of paper and put your names in, and when you talk about those things, the study of genealogy, it teaches you one big thing. That's all about connection.
Something left me. How everything doubles every generation.
Right. You fill out the form pretty quickly sometimes, and you run out of room.
You get out there into about the 8th generation, and the space that's devoted for that name, you can just about write it in.
Yep.
And that's always a challenge. So you have to break off into different charts. So we started out with monthly meetings with speakers on the subject, and it wasn't long before we started doing an annual seminar. They were held originally at the Athenaeum. We had one, and we moved to the community college and had several out there. Wound up with the last one down at one of the motels.
Yeah, it must have been complicated to trace your genealogy without the internet that we're all so used to these days, and
Well,
have to write letters all over the country.
there was the old-fashioned way.
It worked. Many great genealogies were created before the internet.
Oh, yes.
It was probably harder in some instances and easier in other instances, I think, without the internet.
I have some paperwork from a great-grandmother from like the late 1800s, and just a piece of paper. But I guess back then there were a lot of people, they stayed in the same area. They might have been farmers over in Petersburg, New York, and hither and yon. Some moved to Pittsfield, and that's one reason I'm here today. But nowadays people move so far away, it'd be more difficult.
Let me fill something in when I lost track of something a couple of minutes ago.
What's the microphone?
What it teaches you, if nothing else, is the meaning of geometric progression.
Oh, okay.
That's what I meant to say, and I couldn't think of the word.
That's a phrase you don't use every day.
Well, it's awful hard to work that into a conversation.
But you did. But you did.
I got it. A little bit out of place, but I got it. We started a magazine not long after we were organized. It was started by Dennis Lessier, who was the local history librarian at the Berkshire Athenaeum. And it was very small, about 4 sides of the paper. And it got bigger and bigger. Nowadays we publish it quarterly, 36 pages.
Yep.
And we're showing you a copy of it right here. I happen to be the editor of that, too, besides being president of the association. So
Right.
Don is actually our all-purpose member of the whole organization.
A lot of interesting tales from the olden days.
Right now we're in the process of, or have been for quite some time, in the process of republishing a lot of old stories from a monthly sort of newspaper magazine, maybe 20 pages of paper. It was published in Berkshire County called Berkshire Hills Magazine, and it was all full of stories from that period of time, which was the turn of the century, backwards from there. And you get the names of a lot of the old founders and what they did, and some of the good things they did, and a lot of the bad things they did, and how weird some of them were, and who was the town character, and
stuff not many people know from the old days, and things that nobody knows that they were on the site of the parking lot behind England Brothers. There was a big factory back there.
Yeah, you get all the odd characters like Crazy Sue Dunham and Obie Joyful.
Right, yeah.
Go ahead.
My involvement with Berkshire family history began when I would see notices in the paper of these monthly speakers that they would have. The topics were always exciting to me. They were held at the Berkshire Athenaeum in the auditorium, so it was easy access. So I started going to these meetings because they were open to the public. You didn't need to be a member of the BFHA to attend. My interest in genealogy originally started by looking through some old newspapers and seeing a small article about my father who had died when I was 11 years old. And it was a situation I'd never heard of, so I tracked that story until I found out all the details of what had happened. So the combination of that newspaper find and attending the talks that were sponsored by the Berkshire Family History Association, I was hooked. I was sold. I was going to do this for a long time. The full-day seminar Don referred to was wonderful. I attended those. And, of course, at this point, I'm becoming a member of the association, just as kind of an inactive member, observing, attending, and soaking up what they had to offer. And here I am now, Vice President, delighted to be serving in that capacity under Don. This man has more to teach all of us than we can ever learn from him. So I appreciate all of his support and help with the things we do. I've learned a lot, right?
Hopefully.
I have, very much. So then what happened, as has happened with many societies and organizations devoted to genealogy, interest dwindled because of the internet. People were saying, well, I won't attend this talk. I can probably find that information on the internet. And I think many groups, others that I'm familiar with, have gone through the same cycle of high membership numbers, very good attendance at talks and lectures, and then a waning of interest. But we're noticing now, and I've been reading about the fact, that people are now beginning to realize that it's not all on the internet. That I read a statistic once that it said somewhere between 80 and 90% of information that you need as a genealogist is not on the internet. That you still need to seek records out in libraries, record repositories, government offices. There are things housed there that can advance your research that you're not going to find on the internet. Over time, things are being digitized and put on the internet, but at this point in time, you still need to go to these places. Membership in the Berkshire Family History Association has benefits. One being you receive this wonderful publication. You also receive as a member 2, but often more than 2, hours of free research done by volunteers. Berkshire Family History Association volunteers will take requests through the mail and research various things that people ask about.
Yeah, you generally get more than 2 hours.
Very much so, yeah.
If the volunteers get interested in your story, and
they
tend to follow through a little bit more.
That's right. Well, we just recently had a request this week, and we were working on it with 3 other researchers, and the woman was interested in someone's maiden name. Well, we found that maiden name, which led back to history that goes back to William the Conqueror.
Oh, goodness.
And so we sent this woman photocopies of the information that we found. So I'm sure she'll be a very happy camper about that.
That means I'm related, because my family supposedly goes back to William.
Well, there you go. So
And me too.
many.
I think he's one of those central focal points back in the old days.
Probably. And
if you have any Western European ancestry at all, the chances are you're related to William the Conqueror or Charlemagne or both.
Right.
And practically everybody else who was living in the world at that time.
That's right. That's
All 13
exactly
of
it. But finding that documentation and creating that link from one generation to the other, it can be challenging, but it's very interesting. So Berkshire Family History also has a website. Clark is our webmaster, does a wonderful job with that. We'll have a little more to say about that in a few minutes. So moving on from BFHA itself, I think we would need to talk about the the Berkshire Athenaeum. Very close relationship that the Berkshire Athenaeum has with the Berkshire Family History Association. Do you have anything you'd like to say about that, Don, before I just mention a few things?
Well, way back when we were first organized, the state passed something called Proposition 2.5, which cut back on funding of places like the library. And at one point, the local history department had to close half a day because it didn't have enough money for staff. And we decided we might do something about that. Now, we couldn't pay any salaries of staff members, but we could allow the library to divert money they would have paid in salaries to the purchase of new materials for research. So we started with some tag sales, a lot of tag sales. Over a 10 or 11 year period, we had probably 50 sales of most 2 days at a time. That's 100 sales. And as a result, between the money we made on those sales and donations from our members, we have donated just short of $250,000 to that one department.
Wow.
And if you go through the stacks and open the newer looking books, on the inside cover you'll see our sticker there, donated by the Berkshire Family History Association.
Right.
We made a lot of money with tag sales. Every Saturday, I would, this before tag sale season, when other people had started having their sales, I would go around to everyone else's sale with a letter soliciting a donation of all their leftovers to our sale. Oh. And I always got swamped.
Not to mention the sales were held in Don's yard and the materials stored in his garage between sales. So very generous.
My side yard, my backyard,
entire
my garage,
property.
and my driveway. Not to mention the tree line.
That's right. But it was, you know, a major fundraiser for
it was
for the Berkshire Family History Association, and all the proceeds were donated to the library in terms of books purchased and materials that they needed. So it's quite, to me, one of the best things about Berkshire family history is the charitable nature of it, and the hard work that goes into making the Berkshire Athenaeum's local history department well known among genealogists far from here. It has a reputation and is well known for its valuable collection. And among the things that is there is the BFHA index, which I to this day find the most remarkable resource that anyone could hope to find in a place they go to research. And Don Lutes has single-handedly,
not quite.
almost single-handedly, he won't take the whole credit, he has indexed about 6 million names. So if you imagine this, somewhere on the shelves in that library there's a book, big thick book with lots of names and dates and things in it, no index. How do you use that book? So Don went through these unindexed books, typing into a computer program the names, what page they were on, and now that index is available in the library on a computer located there. How was that to do, Don? How could you have done 6 million names?
Well, one name at a time.
One at a time.
One at a time.
I figured out one time how many names I had to average per day to get all these names in. And the first index I made was for the first 10 years of our quarterly. It was a master index for that. And that was in 1988. And this is going on 30 years next year that I've been doing it, one after the other after the other.
So if you go in there and you ask for Joe Smith, it'll tell you how many places he's mentioned in all these books that they have at the library.
It's phenomenal.
I sat down and figured out how many days there were between 1978 and whatever date I was figuring it, and I figured if I did this for 7 days, which is something I do. No days without using the computer to put something into it. I figured I would have to have done 800 to 900 names a day.
That's just mind-boggling.
To get the total in there. So when people want to look up a name in the Athenaeum, all they have to do is sit down at the computer where our database is located, type in the name, surname first, / and given name, hit enter, and in about a split second you're gonna have a list of however many books that name appears in. Actually, the total number of books that were done as of now is around 1,150.
Wow.
So if you can bet on John Smith appearing in every one of
a couple of pages worth of John Smith,
and that takes about 300 pages of index, and that'll all come up on the computer. It'll tell you what book, what author, what call numbers, so you can go over to the stack and take it down and look.
It's a resource that's a first go-to spot for the volunteers. We that research there for people who request research. That's the first stop. We start with that index. So it's just a remarkable thing, Don, and I want to personally thank you, as does the general public, for that effort. It's just
let's give up the names of some other people who were helping with the index. Way back at the beginning, Roger Anderson and Ian Hunt helped me out.
Okay.
And that went on for a short time, but nevertheless they were help. And Roger had an idea about halfway through what we did that it would be a good idea to make a master index of all of the books that we had done and put them in some sort of a database. And Roger, one of the things Roger always confessed that he wasn't a programmer, but he knew somebody who was.
Very good.
And that was Joe Lavelle. So ever since then, Joe has been working on a quarterly basis on putting all these computer files into the database.
Well, we thank them too. One other quick thing to say about the relationship between Berkshire Family History Association and the Berkshire Athenaeum is the fact that the BFHA and the library co-sponsor classes that are offered free to the general public. Angela Rifkin, myself, Vera Sylvia, Alan Horrible. We have classes that are presented on a recurring rotation where we teach some basic things about doing genealogical research, and the classes are well received and really popular with people that come in, and they have a good time. So before we run out of time, there's one more thing that I think we'd like to make sure we get to, is the fact that we have an upcoming program planned. As was mentioned earlier, the Berkshire Family History Association used to do pretty much a monthly lecture on some topic of importance to genealogists. Well, over time that became less viable. Attendance was down a little. It was hard to get one speaker a month that would be appropriate for the talks. So that kind of went by the wayside. So not that long ago, a group of us were talking about possibly restoring some programming to the Berkshire Family History Association. We knew we couldn't, at least initially, do a monthly meeting. That was too big. We didn't want to do a full-day seminar as we had had in the past. So a small committee was formed, which included Don, Angela Rifkin, Art Young, Vera Sylvia, Gail Pinna, and myself, to explore options. What could we do to bring some programming back? So we came up with a plan, and the end result is that on Thursday, May 18th, next month, from 6 to 9 p.m., at the Pittsfield Country Club, we're going to have a speaker. The speaker's name is Dave Robeson. He's a professional genealogist and owner of the Old Bones Genealogy of New England, which I think is a very clever name for a genealogy business. And the two topics he's going to present are very relevant to what we've just been talking about. one of his talks, and he had many for us to choose from, which was one of the appeals for selecting him as our speaker. But from his offerings, we've chosen the rich resources of Western Massachusetts, so that people who attend this evening program will be made aware of many things they're not aware of what are available in Western Massachusetts for genealogists. And his other talk is going to be entitled, "It's Not All on the Internet, Using Alternative Sources." And this is a topic that, again, speaks to this belief that people have, especially based on a lot of the TV programs like Who Do You Think You Are, which make it look really easy to go back generations in an hour, which is never the case. So anyhow, that's coming up again. It's on May 18th. Our website, which was on the screen just a moment ago, you can go there to obtain a registration form. The program's a real bargain. It's $10 a person, includes the 2 lectures, some snacks and refreshments in between the 2 talks. But if you choose to become a BFHA member or choose to renew an existing BFHA membership, for $12, you get that year's membership and its benefits along with admission to the talk. So it's really a very inexpensive opportunity to get out and maybe become more excited again about what's going on in the world of genealogy. Similarly, you can call Don to receive in the mail a registration form. And his number is, I don't know if it was on that graphic, but 413-445-5521. So there's a couple of options for ways to register for this program. So we're hoping for a good turnout. We're hoping for this to become something that we can do on a more regular basis. This is kind of sending up the test balloon and seeing what's happening. So that's all I have to say.
Thanks to our guests, and
You're welcome.
I think we've had a
us.
fantastic show here, and hope to get a great turnout at the seminar coming up in May.
Thank you very much.
That's it for today at PCTV's FYI.